Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I want to humbly acknowledge the land which you live, learn, work, and play. It's Treaty 8 territory, traditional lands of the Cree and Dene, and unceded territory of the Métis people. For the record, we have Councillor Ball joining us online. And Councillor Ball, if you keep your camera turned on for voting purposes. If anyone in attendance wishes to address council on any of the agenda items, please register with the Legislative Services desk located to my right. So I'll only be calling on those who have registered to speak. Following your submission, please remain seated for questions following your presentation. You also must register prior to the start of the agenda item in which you're speaking, and registered delegates will be permitted 5 minutes to speak and must remain on topic. First up, we have the report on our 2023 Q2 financial performance report. So I'd like to invite Lori Farquharson, Chief Financial Officer, to introduce the report, please.
See if this one we do have. Oh, it's on now. Okay. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Lori Farquharson, Chief Financial Officer, and here with me this evening is Susan McIsaac, Manager of Financial Planning. Administration is recommending acceptance of the 2023 Q2 Financial Performance Report as information. The year-to-date operating revenues to June 30th, 2023 are $294.9 million. On an annual basis, the revenue projection is $585.2 million, an increase of $11.9 million over the budget. This is shown primarily in net taxes available for municipal purposes, which is under budget by $900,000 due to reduction in property tax assessments during 2023. Government transfers is over budget by $600,000 due to unbudgeted grants, $200,000 due to LITP grant, and $200,000 in additional funding from Alberta Health Services. The sales and user charges are over budget by $1.7 million due to unbudgeted 2023 user fee increases that were effective on April 1st of 2023 as a result of passing the user fees and charges bylaw. Return on investments is over budget by $10 million due to higher than budgeted interest rates, particularly with cash and short-term investments. The year-to-date operating expenses to June 30th, 2023 are $218.1 million. On an annual basis, the expense projection is $466.7 million, a decrease of $1.4 million from the planned budget. This is primarily related to contracted and general services due to lower than anticipated external support requirements, including $700,000 in contracted photo radar services and $300,000 in health and safety program support. The municipality approved the 2023 capital budget of $135.8 million. As of June 30th, 2023, the capital budget has been increased by $6.2 million to $142.1 million from 2023 capital budget amendments. As of June 30th, 2023, $59.1 million has been spent on the delivery of capital projects. The top three projects by spend are the Saunderson PRV and Lower Town Site Supply Lines, the Public Works North Facility, and flood mitigation construction, which represents 43.8% of the year-to-date spend. The current amount of cash in the bank plus investments totals $1.4 billion as of June 30th, 2023. The bank balance is reflective of incoming annual tax revenue for 2023. The investment holdings are a variety of securities as defined by the authorized investments under the MGA. It should be noted that over 68% of our investments, which is $682 million, will not mature within the next 5 years. The commitments against cash and investment balance include $460.6 million for operating requirements, $63.3 million in deferred revenues, and $527.8 million in committed reserve funds. This leaves an uncommitted balance of $373.3 million to fund future priorities. I'd like to highlight this uncommitted balance. As we progress towards the 5-to-1 tax ratio, our revenues will continue to decline while the economic pressures of annual inflation rise. This uncommitted balance will be the municipality's primary funding mechanism outside of the annual tax revenue and grants to address short-term tax stabilization. The municipality, with the exclusion of the subsidiary 9 agencies, does not have any debt. Currently, the RMWB receives minus 1.7% interest on cash balances in our bank account. RBC's prime is currently at 7.2%. So currently we are earning approximately 5.5% interest on our cash balances in the bank. For 2023, the municipality has been awarded grants totaling $33.1 million during the first 2 quarters, comprised of $23 million in capital grants and $10.1 million in operating grants. Applications continue to be submitted as grant opportunities arise. We currently have 3 extraordinary events that we continue to work with the province under the Disaster Recovery Program. Administration has submitted a preliminary application for the response to the 2023 Rocky River wildfire. The current estimate is $8.2 million. Efforts towards recoverable expense identification are still in progress. To date, the municipality has identified $30.4 million in recoverable expenses for the river breakup costs and $284.2 million associated with the 2016 wildfire. Administration is continuing to work with the province to submit eligible expenses for these DRP claims. The municipality does continue to look for cost efficiencies while providing the programs and services as outlined in the 2023 operating budget. The municipality is positioned positively for financial sustainability while meeting the expectations of its residents. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lori. Does council have any questions? Councillor Ball.
Thank you. Through the chair, Lori. I was talking to Councillor Bouzier today, and he asked me to ask you something, and he obviously sends his regrets he wasn't able to attend this meeting. Operating, correct me if I'm wrong, you got us pegged around 460 million, I think it is.
400, and through the chair to Councillor Ball, the expense projection for the year for operating is $466.7 million.
Right. So taking that into account, that's obviously now. And you said we're positioned well for the future, but have we done any calculations on what our total cost to operate is going to be once some significant projects come online, like rural water and sewer and so on? I assume those are going to come with some high expenses for operating. And do you know what that number is?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, the operating departments have been directed to provide information with their budget submissions to identify the total cost of ownership. At this point in time, I do not have those details. I hope to have a clearer picture of that as we go through the 2024 budget cycle.
Okay, yeah, it's not critical. It's just I'm thinking, you know, in the future, do we have a plan in place to accommodate some of these, I assume, oncoming expenses?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, that is a very astute observation, and it's one which we are keeping a very close eye on.
Well, it was Lance's, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball, via Councillor Ball, Bussier. Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. Thank you for the presentation, Laurie. Is the municipality in a healthy financial position?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Councillor Cardinal?
Thanks, Mayor. Through the chair to the presenters, thank you for the presentation. I just got a question about maybe the emergency services that we provided for the Rocky River fire, and you were saying that we don't have a timeline on when do you figure that we'd get expenses back from the governments for what was spent on or what, I guess that would be, well, let's answer that question first. Sorry about that.
Through the chair to Councillor Cardinal, the process for the DRP is extremely involved. It takes a great deal of time. As I presented on the slide, we are still working to get recoveries back to the 2016 fire event that happened. So it's a very involved process. When you're in the state of an emergency, we need to pay our suppliers as quickly as possible. And things are happening out in the field very quickly. So yes, it does take a great deal of time.
I won't even ask the next question then. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cardinal. Councillor Benjoko?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and thank you, CFO, for the presentation. Thank you as well, Manager. So the surplus projection is 13.3 million for this year, and the revenue is 11.9 million over budget. And then you said the expenses are also lower by 1.4 million. So I'm wondering the current economic environment, the supply chain issues, how we can have so much of, it's good to have good news, but it's almost unbelievable how we got to here. Could you clarify how we arrived? Because, I mean, just to be sure that that this is happening.
Through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, the primary reason for that surplus is because of the very high interest rates that we are currently receiving from the Royal Bank. So we, on average, have anywhere from 150 to upwards, like right now, our bank balance is approximately $300 million. We're getting 5.5% interest on that money, so it's over $1 million a month just for interest expense or interest earnings.
Okay.
So the main reason for that surplus is interest income, which is over and above what we had budgeted for. So we anticipated a certain volume of interest income, but nobody ever projected that the prime rate would be over 7% at this stage. And in addition to that, we did release some expenses. So we identified areas where we weren't going to have expenses. So the operating areas have released those funds to use for fiscal savings.
Okay, thank you so much. And so the budget is also lower for the expenses because of the released spend, or?
I'm sorry, through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, can you repeat
No,
that, please?
I said, is that why also the budgeted expenses is lower by about 1.4 million? Because with supply chain issues, cost of materials, and ripple effect of delays to projects, I'm wondering how we can have a positive figure for the expenses to be lower than projected. If a project is cancelled or anything, I just wanted to know why or how.
Through the chair to Councillor Benjoko, no projects have been cancelled. So there's 1.4 million in reduced anticipated expenditures and contracted and general services. And I believe that was related to the cancellation of the photo radar program. So we had revenue coming in for photo radar, but then we also had operating expenses associated with that. So because that contract is being canceled at the direction of council, we therefore have 700,000 in savings. And then there was additional programs that were anticipated to be administered through health and safety, which are no longer happening. So again, they have released those funds to be used for other priorities in the organization.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bajoko. Councillor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman, and through to Lori. Is the upcoming 2024 budget leaning towards essential services?
Through the chair to Councillor Stroud, administration is working very diligently on a prioritization process for all of the capital projects, and we are definitely looking at a different measurement, which includes focusing on priority services, safety, risk, that sort of thing. It is a new process that we're looking at to prioritize things that will come forward to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud. Are there any questions from council? I'm not seeing any, so thank you. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Can I someone make the motion? Or sorry, do we have any delegates this item? I don't think so.
We have no delegates,
No,
thank you.
Didn't think so. Can I someone make the motion? Councillor Grandison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the 2023 Q2 financial performance report be accepted as information.
Thank you, Councillor Grandison. Can someone second that motion? Councillor Cardinal?
I second the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Then further questions for administration from council, followed by debate. Not seeing a call for a vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have the report on the 2023 Q2 capital budget fiscal amendments update. So I'd like to invite Laura Farquharson, Chief Financial Officer, to remain seated.
Through the chair to the chair, thank you very much. I'm here this evening to present the 2023 Q2 capital budget fiscal amendments as information. The criteria for these capital budget amendments were within the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Policy, FIN 160. There were 3 capital projects that required amendments in this quarter, as listed on Attachment 1. These resulted in an increase of $372,000 to the 2023 capital budget. These amendments were not due to a scope change, and therefore the nature and type of capital projects were not altered. Additional funding was required by 2 of the projects, the first being firefighter rehabilitation vehicle replacement. The procurement for the unit resulted in pricing that exceeded the project budget of $600,000. Additional funding of $110,000 was required to proceed with the purchase. The second item was related to the Conklin Water Treatment Plant upgrade construction. The procurement for the project resulted in pricing that exceeded the project budget of $3.6 million. Additional funding of $262,000 was required to award the contract. The project cash flow was also adjusted to align with the construction schedule. The third project required a cash flow adjustment for flood mitigation construction. The flood mitigation program is comprised of several different contracts and project schedules, which require periodic realignment of overall cash flow. The amendment was to move funds from 2024 into 2023 to align with the construction schedule for ongoing contracts and work that is ahead of schedule in 2023. As a result, $5 million was brought forward from 2024 to 2023. Administration is recommending that the 2023 Q2 capital budget fiscal amendment update as summarized on Attachment 1, 2023 Q2 capital budget fiscal amendments dated June 30th, 2023 be accepted as information. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lori. And that my question was answered during your presentation. So it's good to hear the flood mitigations ahead of schedule. Does council have any other questions? Councillor Ball?
Thank you through the chair to Lori. Perhaps there's someone in the room that can help me understand this shifting of funds from 24 to 23, the $5 million. The description is a bit vague. It just says it covers multiple contracts, multiple schedules. Is there any one particular one that it's meant to assist?
Do we know? No. Through the chair to Councillor Ball, based on the information that was provided from the working group, it appears to be a variety of different projects. So I believe there are 11. You will be receiving a report at the next council meeting next week, which will actually break down the funding allocated by project. The flood mitigation has been increased with the timeline, and as a result, we needed an additional $5 million in order to ensure we could pay the suppliers on a timely basis.
Okay, but I would assume that we had contracts in place and a budget that already covered that. So do we have some cost overruns? Did some materials come in at a higher cost than anticipated and we're paying for change orders, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, no, the contracts are multi-year, and the funding for the flood mitigation program is also multi-year. So when we presented the budget in 2023, we would have had a projected allocation for 2024 and beyond. And this is strictly a cash flow realignment. They ended up making some adjustments and increasing the timeline, which resulted in the need for increased funding, which is within the contractual agreement as I understand it.
So they've shortened the timeline on the construction period, getting more work done. Do we know which particular reaches are ahead of schedule? I'm curious about the progress and when potentially, say, reach 5, knowing full well that one's under construction. What's the intended completion date for reach 5?
I will have to.
I thought it was November 23. So this year. So is that still the target?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, I'd like to invite representatives from the engineering department to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, to Councillor Ball, for the record, my name is Maureen Yakonechny. The completion schedule for Reach 5 was originally 2023. We will be discussing next week, I believe, that we will intend to move some landscaping to 2024. There was a misalignment between the projected cash flow and the construction schedule, so that contributes to the cash flow amendment you're seeing today.
Okay, thank you. So as I understand construction, moving something that was intended to be done this year to next year, is that going to incur additional costs? Because, I mean, inflation happens.
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, for this particular item, it won't, because the work that we're intending to move to next year is part of the contract. So when they bid the contract, they're compelled to give it to us for that price. And moving the work to next year will help us address any consolidation of the berm over the winter. Thank you.
So they're required to continue their price for extended period of time. Is that correct? Over what the original completion was?
Through the chair to Councillor Ball, they are, given that the work is being moved by mutual agreement, part of that agreement includes that they continue to hold that price. And as I mentioned, it is part of their contract, so they are required to honor their price.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Any other questions from council? Councillor Banjoko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. You're saying some of the works on flood mitigation are ahead of the schedule, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Banjoko, some of the construction work is ahead of the cash flow, if that makes any sense. So this cash flow brings the construction schedule and our financial resources back in alignment.
So, so this work or the scope is to, for instance, to do 100 kilometers long mitigation of thing. So you had projected 80 and they're able to do 100, or I'm just using that as something that everyone can understand.
Through the chair to Councillor Banjoko, so let's say that we said we were going to do 100 kilometers of work, and we did our best guess at the time the tender went out, and we said, we think we'll do 20 this year and 80 next year. And then we put it out to tender, and it comes back, and the contractor's like, no, we can do 50 this year and 50 next year. So that's what we're referring to. So our original projection is off, but we're bringing the money forward to make sure they align now.
Okay, thank you. And then back to REACH 5. You said the works that have been extended, the scope of work that has been extended is by mutual agreement. I haven't dealt with contracts a long time myself. I don't understand how that can be mutual agreement and there's no cost to the delay, just like Councillor Ball said. I find that difficult to believe. And I believe our engineering department will be driving, extending the scope. Otherwise, I don't see how a contractor will wake up and say, I'm doing it next, I'm delivering this on this project in spring of 2024 as against fall of this year, and it's okay for us and all that. I need some clarification there. And so if we are delaying it, just like Councillor Ball said, I don't understand how there won't be any cost to that, which we might need more information on this. And I have a reason why I asked that question.
Okay. Certainly. Through the chair to Councillor Banjoko, the work that is being proposed to be done next year for REACH 5 specifically is majority landscaping work. And one thing we find with many of our construction projects in the region is that we'll do the main chunk of the work during what we consider the conventional construction season. So, for example, if we were upgrading underground systems, they're working on that right into September and October. And then in September and October, they're trying to get their landscaping done. Well, they often don't get, there's often not enough good weather to get the grass established and trees planted in, reasonable conditions. So that's the work that is being proposed to be done next year. And how we do that in the contract that we set up has milestone dates attached to it. Mm-hmm. So the milestone date for the overall completion of the project, substantial completion, is in fall of this year, as Councillor Ball mentioned. Mm-hmm. And we have a liquidated damage clause that says if you're not done by this date, there'll be a penalty assessed with that. So to change the milestone dates, we use a change order without any value attached to it to say, hi, we hereby agree that we're changing the completion date for items X, Y, and Z, and then all parties sign. And when you have a agreement to that, you also have to indicate whether there's a change to contract schedule. You're agreeing to change the contract schedule. And you have to indicate whether or not you're changing the contract price.
So what if the contractor is changing the contract price at that point?
Through the chair to Councillor Banjoko, theoretically they could, but then we would refuse to sign the agreement and then we would hold them to the original completion date. And generally, for this situation, because it's landscaping, there's not a lot of materials that they're ordering the next year compared to the value of the materials that they've already installed.
Okay, maybe I'll send an email so I don't hold the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Majoko. Any other questions from council? Not seeing any. Do we have any delegates for this item?
We have no delegates, thank you.
Thank you. Have someone make the motion? Councilor Weigel?
I move that the 2023 Q2 capital budget fiscal amendments update as summarized on attachment 1, 2023 capital budget fiscal amendments dated June 30th, 2023 be accepted as information.
Thank you, Councilor Weigel. Have someone second that motion? Councilor Stroud?
Thank you, Mayor Bowman. I second the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or debate points from council? Not seeing any. Call for a vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And I'm sure next week we'll have more questions on flood mitigation. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you. Thanks everyone for participating in today's meeting. Marcy Cho, Kinmas Compton. Thank you. Have a good night. And that concludes this evening's business. Thanks, Ken. Have a good night, Councilor Ball.
Good night.